How are you doing?
Great.
Good, thanks.
Perfect. Give me 2 minutes. I do my quick introduction and then we can discuss a little bit. So thanks everyone for joining today for the last talk of the Porto Academy Talk Club. So really happy to have today Raphael and Léonard Kadid with us to make the last one. My name is Pauline, I'm architect, I'm editor, and I'm here as part as Aguiar editorial team. So we are a partner this year with Porto Academy to help display a little bit the project and hold these interviews and many other things. So it's a pleasure to be here with all the team of the Porto Academy. So as you might know, since June, we are holding this kind of talk with all the guests that Porto Academy will have this year, lecturer, but also workshop leaders and everything. So the Porto Academy is a summer school that happens every year. So it's like a 1 year, 1 week, 1 year would be a lot. 1 week intense experience with lecture, workshop, visits, so editorial project, and like many things that bring together students, but also teachers from all around the world. And today we have with us Raphael and Léonard. That it's really funny because for me it's the first time I'm going to talk when the Porto Academy visiting Versailles is already done. So maybe you can give us some feedback on how it was and how was the experience. So to explain a little bit, beside the Porto Academy that happens in Porto in the School of Architecture, Porto did this year visiting Versailles in the occasion of the BAP, the Architecture et Paysage in Versailles. And so they were part of the events, and Raphael and Léonard did a lecture, but also participate to the event, as you did like a pavilion for the Visible Invisible with Nicolas Dorval-Bory. So just to introduce you both a little bit, you're both French architects, but you work in different cities. So Raphael works in Switzerland, if I'm right, and you both work, and Léonard in Paris, but you both work a lot with architecture and also object. It's like pretty visible in your practice that materiality is a very important subject for both of you. Also to say that Raphael is having like a daily newsletter. That's really nice. If you don't follow it, if you don't follow this newsletter, you need to do it. It's about art and architecture, and the content is really beautiful. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
I'm really happy my part is done. Now it's your turn to talk.
Okay, maybe I start. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to talk a bit practice and the way we work. So as you said, we work in 2 different cities, but we used to live in Basel at the same time. And so for my part, I used to work in Switzerland for 4 years, and then I head back to Paris to create my own studio. And Raphael was working in an office, and then he changed an office, and now he's like working independently for around a year. And yeah, you're right. Like we work a lot in different scales, and the scale of the object is really important to us, and it kind of came naturally, I think, for several reasons. The first reason is as young practice, it's often difficult to get the first building on the way or to interact with matter directly. And so it came naturally as a need of understanding what the matter is, how it reacts, what is the mechanical properties of, I don't know, concrete, a piece of solid wood, or a bent sheet of aluminium. And I think it's for both of us, I think I can talk for both of us about that. It came naturally and as a way really to understand some properties of materials, and yeah, produce interesting pieces, or pieces that we thought that were that could be interested to be produced, really directly interacting with matter.
I think maybe I can say, like, so we both like to experiment a lot, like with the objects, but also like I think that what is special is that since we're architects, we're also like we focus a lot on different we say like construction principles, like on a bookshelf, like how to make a simple assembly that is gonna solve like structural systems basically. And maybe I mean for me it's maybe a bit different than for Léonard, because Léonard is designing a lot, and also since before me, but when I started, it was really a way to we say like as a bit like to get the hand down to build basically, and from the scale of the model, the architectural model, to then more complex objects, and then from simple assemblies to more designed and also like contemporary machining techniques. And maybe I think it's also for us, I think it's really important that we are also like looking a lot, like as you say, like I'm doing this newsletter, but we also like every day almost, like we also share between each other like a lot of references when it comes to architecture or like design or even photography. And I think yes, I think like just as Léonard was saying, like when working in a practice, or maybe like starting his own practice and then still being a bit in abstract environment, like doing objects is really a very good exercise to basically to make a project from the concept to the different iterations of the prototypes to the finished product. And I mean, at the end, we also, is what we said a bit at Porto, is that of course there is a big difference in scale, but the process of designing an object like or an architectural project, it can be also seen kind of in similarities a lot. And I think that's also what is interesting us to work in both scales. And I think it's for sure very, like, we don't really think about it, but it's also very enriching. I don't know if say enriching to have this both scale, both sides.
Yeah, because in the end the process stay the same. You go through the same phases of doing the work and redoing it as many times as you need. And even if it's the scale of an object, as you work with very special materials, you probably need to work with people that know how this material work exactly. So
yeah, and I think there's an important point about furniture design is I get often asked the question, okay, so it's nice. So then once you do like when you are doing this architectural project, like, so you can integrate furnitures and furnitures, they kind of, so you kind of design these furniture pieces as the part of the project, you know, like as an extension of the project towards the scale of the object. And I think I can talk for both of us. We don't really see it that way. For us, I think for us, furniture, actually in French, furniture is called mobilier, which is the mobile part, and architecture is called immobilier, the immobile part. And so for us, architecture still should remain open for appropriation by the people, and the furniture is something that you can change somehow, like you can move around, and also you can also define a space with the furniture that it is in. And so for this matter, I think we really see the work with furniture as autonomous somehow, and it's kind of an exercise towards I don't know, like reducing as much as possible and trying to like decompose to understand what are really the essence of an object, where it comes from, you know, like, so if it's from, like, for example, from Raphael shells, could be like a really simple assembly, like a joint, or for like I don't know, a lamp. It could be really starting from the technological device, like for example, like a new kind of LED, and then this is the starting point from the design, and then let's say that the design will just be accompanying the way you will express the best, really like this starting point, this component or this structural element, or this just somehow the fundament of the piece. And we see it almost like as an architectural exercise, somehow like it would be, because the table is just a simple structure, it could be really seen as a roof with some columns or planes. And we really see it as an exercise that we can also transpose to architecture. Let's say, how do you assemble an aluminum beam with vertical solid wood elements, and how do you how do you brace the structure in the most simple way, and as the bracing becomes also the vertical load descent points. And so yeah, basically I think it's really somehow like an architectural exercise towards reduction somehow.
But also, I mean, also a bit, it's also a compositional exercise, I would say. Like, I mean, we of course, I mean, when we design, of course, like it has, the concept is also always like a very strong, and we say like Léonard was saying, like for a bookshelf, it's gonna be about one assembly system, or like it's always like very focused, let's say. But I think it's also the thing that is nice with furnitures and in comparison, especially with like architecture, is that we don't have all these compromises to deal with, like that you would have with a client, or with like a complex program, or with like regulations from a specific site. And so I think that's the thing. I mean, of course, there is constraints, and it's important as well, like especially when it comes to furniture, maybe less into lighting, but I mean, of course, that is also what interests us, like because it's also, I think it's also something that we don't really learn actually when at school or in the practice, like how to compose with like shapes and like materials, maybe especially materials, because I mean, I guess before an architect is gonna put his hands on the material of the construction site, some time would have happened. So I think for us it came kind of naturally in this direction, I would say.
Yeah, and as you say, it might even be the opposite, meaning it's the material that dictate how the project will move on or will develop, because like it depends of the special capacity of this material.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And you have the same sort of approach. It's really funny. I mean, and have you ever worked together before the pavilion or never? Or the pavilion of the Biennale was your first work together?
So as Raphael said, that we are always exchanging. So basically, for example, like we need the approbation of the other to, I don't know, to like the project or to go on with a project somehow. So let's say that we kind of always did work together, but not like signing in both names. But it's true that the Biennale was kind of the opportunity to do a first project together, and yeah, it went very well. And then it was followed by this lecture for Porto Academy. That was also a great opportunity for us to share these principles of designing both architecture and furniture. And so now we are moving on to maybe establish a more, let's say, long-term like collaboration. And yeah, but that's for sure that we always worked to like somehow in parallel and and together.
Mm-hmm. It's also a question of opportunities. That I mean, like of course, if we can work on a project together, I mean, for sure, like this. That's also why we did we proposed to do a pavilion for the Biennale, because we thought like it's the perfect frame for this. Yeah.
And for you, well, maybe you can explain a little bit how is the pavilion for people that didn't saw it and what was your concept behind. But also I wanted to know if this pavilion for you is closer to be a furniture or closer to be architecture, as it's the sort of scale that's in between.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's true that the scale of the detail and the level of thought about these details, we pushed them also together with incredibly talented craftsmen, Perron and Frères, and textile designer Alban Gaillet. We had like a great team, and we really wanted to really push the designs, yeah, to express like really what the material is capable of. So it's the idea was to create a textile pavilion inspired by the nomadic architecture from the Bedouin in the desert, like that have. Can you hear me? That
we're losing you a bit. You're coming back.
you can. Is it okay now?
Yeah, I think yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea of the pavilion was, yeah, the idea of the pavilion was to create like a textile pavilion inspired by nomadic architecture that basically has the notion of economy of means is like kind of vital for this kind of architecture, and because it has to be transportable, and as it is a pavilion, it's kind of reaching the same topics and the same idea. And so to move on with this concept, we wanted to have like a very simple structure that would be easy to assemble on site, and that would also activate the textile structurally. Like, so it's basically 4 portals mounted on I don't know the name actually, rotating pivots, and these portals, they are free to move, and they are putting in tension a textile interface. And so basically the textile is kind of holding the whole pavilion and framing the views towards the outside and protecting the inner platform from the sun and yeah, the elements.
I think also, yeah, maybe
we're losing you again.
Do you hear me?
Me, I hear.
Okay. So yeah, I think also it's I mean, I think this is also something that is also what we always try to do when we in the furnitures and like in the objects is to think about you know, like the like the assemblies as a versatile technique. And so that's why we also wanted to also work in this direction for the pavilion, that nothing is like built to stay and then being not being reused. It's like the whole idea is that each element is kind of standard, and then the wood, the platform can be disassembled and then either reassembled to another site, or then being reused in another way. And I think it's also something that is very, I mean, for us, that we always, and since the beginning, that we always try to have as an approach when towards furniture and design in general, I would say.
Yeah, it was really nice for this. Like when I went to visit the Biennale, and your pavilion was really complementary, I think, with all the others, because all of them has really different materials. Some of them were really like meant to stay, not to, and yours was really more interactive. And I think it was really funny to see how people were using each one of the structure all along the Biennale. It was really interesting. So did you discuss about only this matter of scale during your conference, or what was about? What subject did you choose to share with the students of the Porto Academy when they visit Versailles?
I mean, we talked a lot about visual inspiration, and so like the fact that we work a lot with images, basically. like it's also like when we communicate, and I think that's also what is very important and what is defining us. Maybe more particularly is that we had the same education, and we went to the same architecture school, and also like just the fact of living in the same city and having basically the same background. We have like a very, we have a very similar approach, and I think it's like like we can relate to a situation or to inputs quite similarly, and that is why it's also it's very easy for us to to comment or to exchange on like architecture or design, and we have like this kind of very direct way of communicating, not so much by talking. Actually, we don't really telephone to each other. We just more like we write or we exchange images, and I think it's, yes, I don't know if it's like I think it's like all this old building a background of common references that we share. Yeah. I don't know.
That's also what you share with your newsletter. It's a bit this same concept, except you don't send to Léonard, you send to everyone, no?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this started really as a private daily investigation, and then was shared to only like very few people, and then from there it became bigger. Now it's like more kind of a public at the end, public media, but it was it started more in a private sphere, I would say. Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm really interested in images, visualization, and all the representation of architecture. And you share all these images. You're telling yourself, like, for you, it's a way of communicating through the project you see and everything. And your practice are all the projects you display on your website, especially yours, Léonard, that has like just like images that pass. It's like everything is photography. So when you say you speak a lot about image and visual, do you mean more photography, or is also line work and every other sort of pieces of work that come before the building and not just at the end? Does my question make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, let's say that the more visual references will come along the conceptualization of the project, or like in the design process. Yeah, on my website there is only 2 slideshows with images, and if you noticed, it's mainly crops. So so it's really to show, like, to put the hands on the idea of the materiality of each project, and so how each material is assembled with another one. What is the scale of the matter somehow? If you like wood, for example, solid wood is actually a very precise material, and so to understand solid woodwork, you need to see the wood fibers. And if you don't see the wood fibers, then you can never really grasp the, let's say, that all the work that was made for a piece to work. And so, yeah, it's basically why I show a lot of materiality, a lot of close-ups on project, really to put yeah, somehow to highlight this work with materials in the detail somehow.
Yeah, I mean, your approach on your website is quite bold in terms of, I think every architect around here or a designer wants to show the project, want to show everything, the before, the during, the after, and you took the choice to put only some extract. This is really unusual, no?
Yeah, it's let's say it's somehow it's to, I don't know, it's for the work to be as a whole, like, you know, like as coherent, and so. Yeah. It's also why the project they are not each one one after each other. They are mixed. Everything is completely mixed, and then it's really to present like all the spectrum that should be somehow coherent and going in the same direction, and that's to make people understand kind of this main idea of working. And it's also, I don't know, like also to tease.
Yeah, it works very well. I mean, just by seeing this, as you say, we have the atmosphere, and it's like, okay, whatever, this guy is doing beautiful things, so I trust, you know, it's like, I believe it's beautiful.
It works then.
Exactly. Sometimes it's better not to show too much to future client. If not, they get stitched to something and it's just impossible to move on to something a bit different.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us a little bit, what are your actualities? What are you working on at the moment?
You mean me or both of us?
Both of you, because you don't work together, but you have the same kind of approach.
So actually, if I can talk for my brother, I mean, there's like a big news is he won together with friends that we have in common, architects based in Basel. They won a competition in Switzerland. So that's for a primary school. So it's very nice because can you hear me? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very nice because it's basically it's, you know, like the system of competition is very hard to live with, and it's a lot of production and not so much somehow rewarding moments, but sometimes it happens. And so yeah, I'm extremely proud for my brother that they managed to win this competition. And so I think that will also make our collaboration evolve in the future. And so that's very nice. For my part, I work a lot in renovation in Paris and in other cities in France mainly, also a bit in Greece, and I do almost half of my time. I work with design brands internationally, like New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, and so I tried to, for my design practice, I really try to work more like in this industrial design idea, where basically you have like the magic of not knowing your client, and which is kind of unique to this kind of practice. And basically you don't really control the way or the diffusion of the project you've been working on for several years. And I think it's, then you kind of let it go, and then you will influence the life of others at somehow at a small scale, but still that you don't control. And somehow sometimes you have like you have news from these species, and you see them, you go somewhere and you see them, and then you know that people really were somehow touched by the piece. And so that's kind of extremely rewarding. And sometimes, like, you know, when you work with a direct client, even for, I don't know, like custom pieces or scenography or interior design, or I don't know, then at the end when you deliver the project, there is no like so much surprise, like expectation from your side of the client reaction somehow. Yeah, that's kind of the
Probably because when you design furniture pieces, you put a lot on yourself of your own creative mind inside, because it's far more you doing it. And as you say, because the final client, you don't know them, so you don't have this constant feedback. One, it's architecture size, and you work with client, there is this go and back through all the process that make it less of a surprise at the end, or you know how people are going to react because you worked with them all along. So it's probably a pretty different way to interact with your own production.
Yeah, exactly. Like what I often say is that the really big difference is that when you're working at the scale of architecture, you have to convince, like, let's say 4 people. You have to convince the protected historic area people. You have to convince your client first. You have to convince the neighbors. You have to convince, if you are working with an associate, you have to convince your associate. So it's like a lot of work in like somehow in convincing people, which is, I think, really fundamental in the practice of architecture. But let's say, like in the design, from the design point of view, you only have to convince yourself, which is sometimes extremely difficult because you have to choose when to stop and when to say, okay, this is ready for production. And sometimes it's sometimes it can take years. It can take several years before you are happy with the result.
Yeah. Or before you're satisfied, or before you just don't want to see it anymore and let it go.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of try that. Satisfied.
Of course.
But I think, yeah, maybe it's also something that is, I mean, like the process. I would say the thing is that it's really reversed, because when you do an object, at the end, as Léonard say, when you're convinced, at some point you after like some prototypes, you think, okay, now it's like I'm where I want to be, and then you have you propose it to people, and then people will either like it or not like it, and in the case of they would like it, they would buy. But the funny, I always think it's funny to imagine that if you compare it with architecture, you know, it's like if you would have someone, like I have a small shop in Basel, and I would have someone coming and then saying like, "Hi, I like this lamp, but you know, I think it would be nicer if maybe you could just change this, or like maybe you could make this a little bit different," you know, like, so this is really something that is like at the end also, like as you say, like Léonard, like it's also a bit difficult because you don't have so much we say guidelines, like constraints to follow, but I also think it's like it's really like we say it's a really gratifying things to see, like also like when then you receive pictures of people like that are having that have your objects and that are like very happy about it, and it can be like all over the world, and I think this is really like also, of course, a big motivation. And maybe, I mean, it's true that we work a little when it comes to furniture. I would say not the way to develop them so much, but mostly like in the production. That Léonard is really like working with companies, and I'm more like trying to we say I more like gather parts and I produce myself. So this is also a little bit different. So the scale as well of our production is very different. Léonard is like, I don't know, many chairs than were sold like in these different companies, but like my series are always really reduced. And, which is also, I mean, for me, it's also like it was my starting point to work by hand. So that's why I'm happy to keep it. Even if like now I'm also working on lamps, on chandeliers for a tower. But and this would be I would not be responsible for the production because it's very technical. But it's also like something different. Then now it's really becoming closer to architecture than to basically craftsmanship. That's for sure.
Very nice. Well, you seem to have a lot of things to do in the future. I'm really happy. It's funny to think that you have the same approach, but one will work more with like big brands, and the other one want to work more with like his own production, you know? So very nice. Thanks for being here with us today. It was really, really nice to talk. And I hope you had fun in Versailles and with the Porto Academy. And just to say to people, of course, Porto Academy, the session that in Porto, like the main one, will start next Wednesday. So we are really happy. Follow the Instagram of the Porto Academy, and they will put stories and everything. And you should follow a little bit of this because it's a really, really great experience, and we're going to try to show a maximum of it. And thanks for everyone that followed this talk, and for you two to have been there today, and for all the people that participate to the organization and everything.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for inviting us for the talk. I mean, as we said, of course, like now Léonard is in Greece and I'm in Basel, and it's like, of course, like to have this this crazy multi connection is also like, of course, like is always a great opportunity for us to share our work. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
No, for me, it's something I love, this international connection. It's like, I'm in Barcelona. Last week I was in Basel. You're in Basel, you're in Athens, but you're supposed to be in Paris. And it's like, okay, everyone is everywhere. So thanks a lot, and see you soon, and bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.